Jake's perfect life, happy marriage, loving son, stable job, crumbles when he spots a crack in his wife Sarah's routine. A lingering glance at her phone, a too cheerful smile after a simple errand. What's she hiding? Trust was his anchor, but doubt now pulls him under. Will Jake uncover the truth before it destroys his family? Hit subscribe and turn on notifications to follow this gripping tale of betrayal and justice. Don't miss a single twist in this heart-pounding story. Jake Miller, 35, had built a life most would envy in suburban Denver, Colorado. He was the guy who showed up early to his son Ethan's soccer games, cheering loudest from the sidelines, and a husband who surprised his wife Sarah with impromptu weekend hikes in the Rockies. As an HVAC technician, he spent long days fixing air conditioners across the city, his hands calloused but his spirit light. Sarah, 33, worked part-time as a dental assistant, leaving her afternoons free to manage their home and their 8-year-old son, Ethan. Their routine was predictable. School drop-offs, work, dinners filled with Ethan's chatter about superheroes, but worked. Jake trusted Sarah completely, the kind of trust forged over 9 years of marriage, where doubts seemed like uninvited guests. That trust held firm until a crisp October evening. Jake came home, his work boots heavy from a long shift, and found Sarah in the kitchen, her phone glowing in her hand. She was smiling, not her usual tired grin after a day of errands, but a bright, private one, like she was reliving a secret moment. "Good day," Jake asked, setting his toolbox down. Her smile faltered, and she quickly locked her phone, placing it face down on the counter. "Just the usual," she said, her voice a touch too casual. Ethan had fun at Liam's today. Liam was Ethan's classmate, a polite kid from a nearby neighborhood. Sarah often picked Ethan up from playdates there, nothing out of the ordinary. But something about her tone, too eager, too rehearsed, made Jake pause. He brushed it off. Sarah was allowed to have good days, wasn't she? She'd always been the organized one, juggling Ethan's schedule and her job with ease. Jake admired that about her. Still, as he grabbed a beer from the fridge, he couldn't shake the image of her smile, directed not at him or Ethan, but at something or someone else. Over dinner, Ethan rambled about a new game he and Liam played, but Sarah seemed distracted, her fork pushing food around her plate. "You okay?" Jake asked. She nodded quickly, mentioning a busy day at the clinic, but her eyes didn't meet his. That night, as they lay in bed, Jake noticed her phone was on silent, tucked under her pillow, a new habit. The next week, the pattern grew clearer. Sarah started leaving for errands earlier than needed, especially when picking Ethan up from Liam's house. On Wednesday, she returned from a playdate pickup with a lightness in her step, humming softly as she unpacked groceries. Jake, home early for once, watched her from the living room. "You seem chipper," he said, half teasing. She laughed, a little too loudly, and said, "Just nice to get out." But the grocery bag held only a loaf of bread and a carton of milk, hardly worth the extra 45 minutes she'd been gone. Jake's stomach tightened, a quiet warning he couldn't name. By Friday, Sarah's insistence on handling Ethan's pickups from Liam's house stood out like a sore thumb. Jake offered to go instead, citing a light workday. "I've got it," Sarah said quickly, already grabbing her keys. "I need to swing by the store anyway." Her excuse was flimsy. Ethan's playdate was at 3 p.m., and the store was a 5-minute drive from home. Jake didn't push, but when Ethan came home, he casually asked about the day. "Liam's dad was there," Ethan said, munching on a snack. "He's cool. He worked from home, I think." Jake frowned. Sarah had mentioned Liam's mom before, but never his dad. When he asked Sarah about it later, she shrugged, saying, "I don't really know him," and changed the subject to Ethan's homework. That night, Jake couldn't sleep. He lay staring at the ceiling, replaying Sarah's quick deflections, her face-down phone, her unexplained cheer. He wasn't a suspicious man. Trust had always been his default, but the pieces didn't fit. On Saturday morning, as Sarah prepared to pick Ethan up again, Jake noticed her take an extra moment in front of the mirror, adjusting her hair with care. "Big plans?" he asked, keeping his tone light. "Just don't want to look like a mess," she replied, her smile tight. She left at 2:30 p.m., earlier than needed for a 3 p.m. pickup. Jake stood at the window, watching her car pull away, his unease growing into something sharper, something he couldn't ignore. He wasn't ready to follow her, not yet. But as he sat on the couch, Ethan's soccer ball idle in his hands, Jake knew he couldn't stay blind. Trust was the foundation of their life, but foundations could crack. And if Sarah was hiding something, he owed it to himself and to Ethan to find out what. Jake's trust in Sarah hangs by a thread as her secretive habits pile up. Late returns, vague excuses, and a phone she guards like a vault. When a mysterious text lights up her screen, Jake's doubts ignite into action. Is Sarah betraying him, or is he chasing shadows? The truth is closer than he thinks, and it's about to unravel everything. Subscribe and hit the bell to catch every pulse-pounding moment of this story of loyalty tested and secrets exposed. Jake Miller's life in suburban Denver had always felt like a steady rhythm. Work, soccer games with his 8-year-old son Ethan, quiet evenings with his wife Sarah. But lately that rhythm was off. Sarah's insistence on picking Ethan up from his friend Liam's house, her guarded phone, and her unexplained cheer had planted a seed of doubt in Jake's mind. By mid-October, that seed was sprouting, and he couldn't ignore it any longer. Her behavior wasn't just odd, it was deliberate, and Jake needed answers. On a chilly Tuesday afternoon, Jake got home early from an HVAC job, expecting to find Sarah prepping dinner. Instead, she was in the backyard, engrossed in her phone, typing quickly. When she heard the back door creak, she startled, locking the screen and slipping the phone into her pocket. "You're early," she said, her voice clipped. "Slow day," Jake replied, studying her. She avoided his gaze, muttering about needing to check on Ethan's laundry, and hurried inside. "Jag ist gut twistet." Sarah wasn't just distracted, she was hiding something. That evening, while Sarah showered, her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. Jake hesitated. He'd never snooped before. Trust had been their unspoken rule. But the buzz felt like a taunt. He glanced at the screen. A notification from an unknown number. "Can't wait for Saturday." Same time? The message vanished before he could read more, replaced by a lock screen. His pulse quickened. Saturday was when Sarah insisted on picking Ethan up from Liam's. Was this a coincidence or something more? The next day, Jake tested the waters. Over breakfast, he casually mentioned taking Ethan to Liam's playdate himself. Sarah's spoon froze midair. "No need," she said too quickly. "I'm already going that way for groceries." Her excuse was flimsy. The store was closer to Liam's than their house, and she'd been shopping a lot lately with little to show for it. Jake nodded, keeping his tone neutral, but his mind raced. He wasn't paranoid. He was awake. By Friday, Jake's unease had hardened into resolve. He needed proof, not assumptions. He remembered Ethan mentioning Liam's dad. Mark worked from home, yet Sarah claimed she barely knew him. Jake did some digging. A quick search on his laptop pulled up Mark's profile on a local business directory. Mark Thompson, freelance graphic designer, single, living in a nearby neighborhood. No mention of a wife or kids. Jake's jaw tightened. Why was Sarah so eager to visit a house that didn't quite add up? Saturday morning arrived, and Sarah was up early, humming as she grabbed her car keys. "Heading to get Ethan," she said, her voice bright but strained. Jake watched her leave, noting the extra care she'd taken with her appearance. Not flashy, but deliberate. He waited 10 minutes, then made a decision. "Ethan, I'm running to the hardware store," he called to his son, who was glued to cartoons. Grabbing his keys, Jake slipped into his truck and followed Sarah's sedan, keeping a careful distance. Sarah drove steadily along the main avenue, but instead of turning toward Liam's neighborhood, she veered left into a quiet residential area. Jake's heart pounded as he trailed her, his truck blending into the weekend traffic. She wound through unfamiliar streets, finally parking in front of a modest house with a low fence and a silver SUV in the driveway. Jake pulled over a block away, his hands gripping the wheel. This wasn't Liam's address. He dropped Ethan off there before. "Who live here?" Sarah stepped out of her car, glanced around, and walked to the front gate. She rang the bell. A man opened the door, tall, athletic, dark shirt. "Mark." He smiled, not like a casual acquaintance, but with a warmth that made Jake's stomach lurch. Sarah stepped inside, the door closing behind her. Jake sat frozen, his breath shallow. He snapped a photo of her car and the house, his hand steady despite the storm in his chest. This wasn't a quick errand. This was a betrayal, planned and executed with precision. Jake waited, the minutes crawling by. 20, 30, 45. His mind churned, piecing together the lies, Sarah's errands, her guarded phone, her sudden cheer. She wasn't just picking up Ethan. She was using their son as a cover. The realization hit like a punch. Sarah was cheating, and she'd woven their family life into her deception. At 4:15 p.m., Sarah emerged, her hair slightly mussed, her expression neutral. She got in her car and drove off, as if nothing had happened. Jake didn't follow. He had what he needed. Driving home, Jake stopped at a gas station, his thoughts a tangle of anger and clarity. He wasn't the type to explode or seek revenge in a haze of rage. He wanted justice, clean, undeniable, and final. Sarah had underestimated him, thinking her careful excuses would hold. But Jake was done being blind. He'd seen the truth, and it changed everything. Tonight, he'd confront her, not with shouts, but with the weight of what she'd done. And he'd protect Ethan, no matter what came next. Jake's world shatters as he catches Sarah sneaking into another man's house, her lies exposed. Armed with photos and a burning need for truth, he's ready to confront her. But will she confess or double down? The stakes are sky high. His marriage, his son Ethan's future, and his own dignity hang in the balance. Don't miss the explosive showdown that changes everything. Subscribe and hit the bell to stay locked into this gripping tale of betrayal and justice. Jake Miller's heart was still racing as he pulled into the driveway of their suburban Denver home. The images on his phone, Sarah's car parked outside a stranger's house, the door opening to reveal Mark Thompson, burned in his mind. He'd followed her, expecting answers, but what he found was worse, a calculated betrayal, with their son Ethan used as a pawn. It was 4:45 p.m., and Sarah would be back soon, likely with Ethan in tow, pretending everything was normal. Jake wasn't a confrontational man, but tonight he'd be unyielding. He needed to protect his family, what was left of it. He sat on the couch, Ethan's soccer ball idle beside him, and replayed the day. Sarah's detour to Mark's house wasn't a one-off. It was a routine, hidden behind flimsy excuses about errands and playdates. Jake had trusted her for 9 years, but that trust was now a casualty of her secrecy. He transferred the photos from his phone to his laptop, saving them securely. Evidence wasn't just for confrontation. It was for the legal battle he knew was coming. He wasn't about to let Sarah's lies unravel his son's stability. At 5:30 p.m., Sarah's car pulled up. Ethan bounded inside, chattering about a new video game he and Liam played. Sarah followed, carrying a single grocery bag, another prop, Jake thought, with maybe a yogurt and a bag of apples inside. "Hey," she said, her voice light, as if she hadn't just spent 45 minutes in another man's house. Market was packed. Jake nodded, his face a mask of calm. He waited until Ethan was upstairs, engrossed in his tablet, before making his move. In the kitchen, Sarah was unpacking the bag, her movements practiced. Jake leaned against the counter, his phone in hand. "Good day at Liam's?" he asked, his tone neutral. She froze for a split second, then smiled. "Yeah, his mom was chatty. Took longer than I thought." The lie was smooth, but Jake was ready. He unlocked his phone and slid it across the counter, the screen showing the photo of her car outside Mark's house. "This isn't Liam's place," he said, his voice steady. "Care to explain?" Sarah's eyes flicked to the screen, and her composure cracked. Her hand stopped moving, the grocery bag forgotten. "Jake, it's not," she started, but he cut her off, swiping to the next photo. Mark opening the door, her stepping inside. 45 minutes, Sarah. Not a quick chat with Liam's mom. Her mouth opened, then closed, searching for an escape. Jake didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The evidence spoke louder than any shout. "It was a mistake," she finally said, her voice low. "A stupid one-time thing. I swear." Jake's jaw tightened. "One time? You've been picking Ethan up every Saturday for weeks. Same house, same guy. Don't lie to me again." Sarah's eyes darted away, and for the first time, Jake saw fear in her. Not of him, but of being caught. She stammered about stress, about needing space, but the words rang hollow. "You used our son as a cover," Jake said, his voice cold. "You don't get to call that a mistake." He laid out his terms. She had until 10 p.m. to pack and leave. There'd be no negotiation, no second chances. Sarah tried to protest, her voice rising. "We can work this out for Ethan's sake." Jake shook his head. "You broke this family, not me. Ethan deserves better than your lies." He turned away, heading upstairs to check on their son, who was oblivious to the storm below. Jake's calm was deliberate. He wouldn't let Ethan see chaos, not tonight. By 8 p.m., Sarah was packing. Jake stood in the hallway, watching as she filled 2 suitcases with essentials. She moved in silence, avoiding his gaze. He didn't help, but he didn't hinder either. This was her consequence, not his punishment. When she tried to speak, something about regret, about loving him, Jake raised a hand. Save it. You made your choice. At 9:50 p.m., she carried the bags to her car, the weight of her actions heavier than the luggage. The door closed behind her, and the house fell silent. Jake sat on the stairs, the quiet pressing in. He felt no satisfaction, only clarity. Sarah's betrayal wasn't just about Mark. It was the planning, the deception, the way she'd woven Ethan into her lies. Jake's next steps were already forming. He'd call a lawyer Monday, file for divorce, and secure custody of Ethan. He'd seen enough to know Sarah couldn't be trusted, not with their son's future. But for now, he checked on Ethan, who slept soundly, unaware of the fracture in their family. As Jake lay in bed, the empty space beside him felt less like loss and more like a clean break. He wasn't broken. He was awake. Sarah had underestimated his resolve, thinking her secrets would stay buried. But Jake had the truth now, and with it, the power to rebuild. Tomorrow, he'd start protecting Ethan's world, brick by brick, starting with a call to a divorce attorney. The fight wasn't over, but Jake was ready. Sarah's gone, but the fallout of her betrayal lingers. Jake, now a single dad, fights to shield his son Ethan from the wreckage of a broken marriage. As Sarah scrambles to salvage her place in their lives, Jake uncovers more secrets, tightening his resolve. Will her desperate pleas change his mind, or will Jake's quest for justice lock her out for good? Subscribe and hit the bell to follow this intense saga of loyalty, lies, and a father's unbreakable bond with his son. Jake Miller woke to a quieter house in suburban Denver, the absence of Sarah's presence stark but strangely liberating. It was Sunday, the morning after he'd confronted her with photos of her betrayal, snapped outside Mark Thompson's house, where she'd spent 45 minutes under the guise of picking up their son, Ethan, from a playdate. Sarah had left by 10 p.m. last night, her suitcases in hand, her excuses crumbling under the weight of Jake's evidence. Now, at 35, Jake faced a new reality: single fatherhood, a looming divorce, and the task of keeping Ethan's world intact. He started the day as usual, pouring cereal for Ethan, who bounded downstairs with his usual energy. "Where's Mom?" the 8-year-old asked, spoon halfway to his mouth. Jake kept his voice steady. "She's staying somewhere else for a bit, buddy. Just you and me for now." Ethan nodded, accepting the vague explanation with a child's trust. Jake's chest tightened. He'd protect that trust at all costs. After breakfast, he took Ethan to soccer practice, cheering from the sidelines as always. Normalcy was his shield for Ethan's sake. By Monday, Jake was in action. He called a divorce lawyer, a no-nonsense woman named Carla, who specialized in family law. In her office, Jake laid out the photos, Sarah's vague texts, and a timeline of her suspicious behavior. "I want primary custody of Ethan," he said firmly. "She used our son as a cover for her affair." Carla nodded, jotting notes. "The evidence is strong. Infidelity won't directly affect custody, but her deception and instability will. We'll file this week." Jake left feeling grounded, his path clear. Sarah, meanwhile, wasn't idle. By Tuesday, Jake's phone buzzed with a long text from her, sent from her sister's place in Boulder. "I messed up, Jake. It was a stupid escape, not love. I want to fix this for Ethan." Jake read it in silence, his jaw tight. Her words felt rehearsed, like another layer of manipulation. He didn't respond. That evening, she called, her voice shaky. "Can we talk? I don't want Ethan growing up without both of us." Jake's reply was curt. "You should have thought of that before you lied." He hung up, his resolve unshaken. Midweek, Jake dug deeper. He checked their joint bank account online, noticing small, unexplained withdrawals. $20 here, $50 there. Over the past 2 months, often on Saturdays. He cross-referenced the dates. They matched Sarah's errand runs. A quick call to the bank confirmed the transactions were cash withdrawals, no receipts. Jake's mind flashed to Mark's house. Was she funding her secret meetups? He screenshot the statements, adding them to his growing file for Carla. Every detail strengthened his case. On Thursday, Sarah showed up unannounced at Ethan's school, hoping to see him during pickup. Jake had already alerted the school, requesting they contact him first. The principal called, and Jake arrived to find Sarah in the parking lot, her eyes red. I just wanted to see him, she said, voice breaking. Jake stayed calm. You'll see him when it's court-approved. Don't make this harder. She left, defeated, but Jake felt no triumph. Only a need to protect Ethan from her unpredictability. By Friday, Jake's lawyer had drafted the divorce papers, prioritizing Ethan's custody and citing Sarah's infidelity as grounds for an expedited process. Carla warned that Sarah might push for shared custody, but Jake's documentation, photos, bank records, even Ethan's casual mentions of Liam's dad, painted a clear picture of her deceit. Jake also canceled Sarah's access to their joint account, transferring half the funds to a new one in his name. He sent her a formal email with the details, keeping everything above board. You'll get what the law allows, he wrote. Nothing more. Sarah's response came late that night. Another text. I know I hurt you. Mark meant nothing. Please, let's try counseling. Jake didn't reply. Her regret was too late, her words too hollow. He thought of Ethan, asleep upstairs, unaware of the legal storm brewing. Jake's mission was singular. Keep his son safe, emotionally and physically. Sarah's affair wasn't just a betrayal of him. It was a betrayal of their family, using Ethan as a prop in her lies. Saturday brought a new challenge. Ethan asked to visit Liam's house, oblivious to the tension tied to that place. Jake hesitated, then agreed, but he drove Ethan himself. At Liam's, he met Liam's mom, Karen, who seemed surprised. Sarah usually picks him up, she said casually. Jake's stomach churned, but he kept his tone light. She's busy today. Karen nodded, unaware of the subtext. Jake realized Sarah had likely never mentioned Mark to her either, a calculated omission. Driving home, Ethan chatted about the playdate, but Jake's mind was on the next steps. The divorce filing was set for Monday. Sarah's attempts to reconnect were growing desperate, but Jake saw through them. She wasn't fighting for Ethan. She was fighting to erase her guilt. He wouldn't let her rewrite the narrative. As he tucked Ethan into bed that night, Jake felt a quiet strength. Sarah's betrayal had cracked their family, but he'd rebuild it, piece by piece, with truth as the foundation. The battle wasn't over, but Jake was ready for whatever came next. Jake's fight for justice reaches its peak as Sarah's betrayal faces the cold light of a courtroom. With Ethan's future on the line, Jake stands firm, armed with evidence and a father's resolve. Will Sarah's last-ditch efforts to rewrite her mistakes sway the judge, or will Jake secure the fresh start he and Ethan deserve? Subscribe and hit the bell to witness the gripping finale of this tale of lies exposed and a family reborn from the ashes of deceit. Jake Miller stood in his Denver home, the silence of Sarah's absence now a familiar companion. Weeks had passed since he'd confronted her with photos of her entering Mark Thompson's house, a betrayal hidden behind playdate pickups for their son, Ethan. At 35, Jake had transformed from a trusting husband into a single father, his focus laser-sharp on protecting Ethan and rebuilding their life. The divorce papers were filed, custody proceedings underway, and Jake's evidence, photos, bank records, and Sarah's own admissions, formed an ironclad case. Today, the conciliation hearing loomed, and Jake was ready to close this chapter. The morning of the hearing, Jake dropped Ethan off at school, keeping their routine steady. "Have a great day, buddy," he said, ruffling the 8-year-old's hair. Ethan grinned, unaware of the legal battle ahead. Jake drove to the courthouse, his lawyer Carla by his side, carrying a folder thick with documentation. Sarah had been pushing for reconciliation, her texts and calls a mix of regret and desperation, but Jake hadn't wavered. Her affair with Mark wasn't just a personal wound. It was a betrayal of Ethan, used as a cover for her lies. In the courtroom, Sarah sat across from Jake, her posture tense. She'd hired a lawyer, a young man who seemed unprepared for Carla's meticulous approach. The mediator, a calm woman in her 50s, opened the session, urging both sides to seek agreement. Sarah's lawyer spoke first, framing her as a devoted mother who made one mistake and wanted to preserve the family. Jake listened, his face impassive. When Carla's turn came, she presented the photos of Sarah's car at Mark's house, bank statements showing suspicious withdrawals, and Ethan's casual comments about Liam's dad working from home. "My client seeks primary custody," Carla said. Ms. Miller's actions show a pattern of deceit, using her son as a pretext. Sarah's eyes dropped to the table. Her lawyer argued for shared custody, citing her regret and willingness to attend counseling. Sarah spoke up, her voice cracking. "I love Ethan. I don't want him growing up in a broken home." Jake met her gaze, unflinching. He didn't speak. His evidence did. The mediator reviewed the documents, her expression unreadable. After a brief recess, she ruled. Jake would have primary custody, with Sarah granted bi-weekly supervised visits, pending proof of emotional stability. The divorce would proceed, with final approval expected within weeks. Jake left the courthouse, the weight of victory tempered by responsibility. Ethan deserved a stable home, and Jake would deliver it. Back home, he reorganized their finances, closing the joint account entirely and setting up a trust for Ethan's future. Sarah's visits began the following weekend, supervised by a court-appointed social worker. Ethan was happy to see her, but Jake noticed a distance in his son's reactions, as if he sensed a shift in her role. Sarah tried to engage, bringing Ethan's favorite snacks, but her smile seemed forced, her presence out of place. Over the next month, Jake focused on rebuilding. He enrolled Ethan in a new soccer league, reconnected with old friends, and started running again, the early morning trails clearing his mind. He wasn't looking for a new relationship. His priority was Ethan and rediscovering himself. Sarah's attempts to reconnect dwindled. She sent one last text, admitting her cowardice in hiding the affair. "I lost myself," she wrote. "I hope you and Ethan can forgive me someday." Jake read it, then deleted it. Forgiveness wasn't his to give yet. His focus was moving forward. By December, the divorce was finalized. Jake signed the papers at Carla's office, the pen steady in his hand. The house felt different now. Not empty, but open, ready for new memories. He and Ethan decorated a small Christmas tree, Ethan's laughter filling the space. When Ethan asked about Sarah, Jake kept it simple. "She loves you, but sometimes people need to be apart to figure things out." Ethan nodded, content with the answer for now. Jake knew tougher questions would come, but he'd face them with honesty when they did. One evening, as Jake tucked Ethan into bed, he paused at the door, watching his son sleep. The pain of Sarah's betrayal lingered, but it no longer defined him. He'd protected Ethan, secured their future, and reclaimed his dignity. Sarah had underestimated his strength, thinking her secrets would stay buried. But Jake had fought with clarity, not anger, and won a life free of lies. As he turned off the light, a quiet peace settled over him. The truth had hurt, but it had also set him free.